Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning. I'm not sure, depends on the time zone. Welcome to the EIT Digital webinar, Reopen Society Using Physical COVID-19 Contact Tracing Tokens. Thanks for joining us. We're very proud to organize this webinar about this exciting technology. My name is Shahab Nastar. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at EIT Digital, and today I will be your moderator for this webinar. People are still joining as we speak, so let me give you a couple of practical information. The webinar is planned to last an hour. I will keep the time as much as I can. But it could be that we are a few minutes over time. So I hope you will bear with us because we have a very exciting things to show you. For the participants, if you have questions in the Q&A section, we cannot take them live, but we will follow up with them after the event. People should know also that there's a article that was published literally a few minutes ago on the EIT Digital website associated to the event, where you can find the links, especially to the solutions that we are going to present today. We do have a very exciting agenda. Let's take a look at it. I will not go through the details of the agenda in the interest of time, but I will present the speakers and panelists as we go. And without further delay, I would like to hand it over to Willem Jonker, the CEO of EIT Digital, for setting the scene for us. Willem?
Shahab, thanks very much. Audience, extremely happy to address you in this webinar. When the COVID pandemic started, we saw immediately in Asia that digital technology was called upon in order to fight the pandemic. And we saw a variation of tracing apps being deployed in order to monitor the spread of the virus and to help fighting it. And when the pandemic became a pandemic and was no longer only present in Asia, also in Europe and the US, it was observed that digital technology could help in fighting the pandemic, and especially in tracing and tracking how the virus was spreading in the population. And because things went at such a high speed, manual tracking and tracing was just not enough to keep things under control. At the same time, it also immediately became apparent that the situation in Europe is quite different from the situation in Asia. And especially in Europe, it became very, very clear that any solution would have to focus on guaranteeing the privacy of the users. And that's actually which launched a debate. It launched a debate on what kind of technology and what kind of protocols to use. A bit unfortunate, we saw in Europe a lot of initiatives going in parallel that were little coordinated. And many attempts of building a contact tracing apps were undertaken in Europe. And with various degrees of success. And I think we can also say that none of the apps really became a flagship success model of how to do it. And that had to do with a couple of reasons. First of all, the enormous debate around privacy. Second, the complexity from running this on apps. Although it looked very simple in the first place, everybody has a mobile phone, so you download the app and there you go. That turned out to be a little bit more problematic, and also all kind of interoperability issues came up. Older versions didn't work. Certain people still had difficulties with the platform. And then which technology to base on, and there started also a centralized versus decentralized discussion. And our keynote speaker will be able to tell you much more about this because he was at the heart of those discussions, Bart Perneel. We at EIT Digital immediately took two elements here to start stimulating our ecosystem to look in this. Of course, now it's about tracking for the pandemic, but this technology has much more potential in the future. So it's important that Europe develops this technology also itself. And if you look to the mobile app applications, of course, they are dominantly non-European solutions. Actually, the whole basic infrastructure underlying apps is a Google, Apple solution. So Europe has to make sure it can have its own position. The other element we saw is that, hey, simplicity, privacy are the key things. And what you do when you are in innovation, you very often look, are there other domains where similar things are? And of course, if you look in logistics, there's a lot of tracking and tracing going on. And what kind of technologies are deployed there? And there you see there's a lot use of tokens that are tagged to objects and can help to track and trace these objects. So bringing all this together, we developed a kind of overarching setup that we pushed into our ecosystem and broader, and we called upon parties to bring solutions based on physical tokens, based on European technology to do contact tracing and complementing the apps in certain areas where the apps did not really take off. And today I'm very happy that we can present 6 of these activities that resulted into very concrete solutions that are currently being tested and deployed as a result of this overarching activity. And therefore, we want to share this with all of you. And of course, also in the whole process of further deploying these technologies and making sure that they are taking up on a broader scale. So once again, thanks for being here. Enjoy the webinar and really enjoy the solutions that will be presented. And of course, enjoy extremely also the keynote by our distinguished guest, Bart Perneel. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Willem. Yeah, I mean, Willem said it all. We're now going to hand it over to Professor Perneel. He is a professor of cryptology at KU Leuven and a key contributor to the DP3T protocol. He's going to tell us about it, and also architect of the Belgian contact tracing app. Bart, over to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shahab, and thank you for having me here. So next slide, please. So I want to give a little bit of context, and I think Willem already explained it, that in Asia, people were very fast. February 2020, 5 coronavirus-related apps were in the top 10 in the Google Play Store in South Korea. And one of them actually was publishing location traces of users who tested positive. Of course, even anonymous way, but I wanted to tell you that, of course, it became possible to de-anonymize this. We know from research, by the way, European research, that if you know some person's location at 4 times in the day, with 95% probability this person can be uniquely identified. So actually, privacy is indeed a concern. Next slide, please. And we have to look at many aspects, so we can actually use technology for many purposes. Today we talk mostly about proximity tracing, but of course other things have been done as well, like crowd detection and cell phone surveillance. We can use this in an aggregate way, and then privacy is not affected. But of course, cell phone surveillance could also be used more or less to detect whether people leave their homes, and can be actually highly intrusive. So today we'll focus on proximity tracing, which is trying to find out whether somebody was near somebody else, or somebody was in the same room as somebody else, maybe not as close, but there's solutions for both. And as Willem explained, there was quite some efforts to do this, to roll out this technology, and there were dozens of startups and small companies and many protocols. I'm very happy to report that actually, I think the protocol that became successful was a protocol that's fully transparent and open, and actually protects privacy. Now you can say, well, why do you have to protect privacy? Well, I gave the Korean example. But on the next slide, you'll find some other examples of the pandemic being abused, or information collected in the pandemic being abused for actually privacy violations. Next slide, please. So as an example, in the UK, the police was given access to test and trace data. Next slide. There is other countries, like in Singapore, the police also asked for this data. In Australia, Secret Service asked for this data, intelligence services. And also it was reported in the UK that a barman used this to actually stalk some visitors of the bar. And then, of course, the most high-profile case, next slide, please, in Europe is the Norwegian case. So Norway modeled its app based on some ideas in Korea, Singapore, and Israel, using location-based technologies. And the privacy watchdog in Norway more or less told the government to shut off the app. And so Norway had to shut down the app because it was privacy violating. And it took them then, I think, about 6 months to come with a new app based on the Danish app that actually is more privacy preserving. Next slide. So what we try to achieve is, the app is complement manual contact tracing. Contact tracing only works if there is sufficient testing, sufficient capacity to process everything, and support in society. If society works against you, it's very hard to do contact tracing if you have no public support. Manual tracing, in spite of the fact that it's old-fashioned and used over the phone, slow and expensive, but of course it has still played a very important role in society. It has limitations that people may not always be willing to collaborate, that people may not remember who they've been in contact with, and if you sit next to somebody on public transport, you may not even know their name or their phone number. So there was this idea to then use an app for this, not using GPS as in the countries I mentioned before, but actually using Bluetooth beacons, and taking privacy by design into account, because essentially we want to encourage people to use it and show them the data cannot be used to hand over to police, intelligence services, to bartenders who want to stalk people, and so on. A big advantage is faster, and if it's well designed, it can also be more accurate and also works with strangers. I think it's an illusion to believe that you will be able to do contact tracing or proximity tracing only with an app or with a special device. I think in practice, you will always have people who don't use the device, or there is cases where the device may not be appropriate. So you actually have to design the system in a complementary way so that one can collaborate with the other. I think that's a mistake that has been made in many places. People thought they could fully replace the manual tracing. I think this is not possible, at least, and I don't think it will be possible in the next decade. We will have to use both. And if we analyze the system in terms of effectiveness or privacy protection, we actually have to take into account the overall system. I think this is an important message. Next slide, please. So what we set out to do in the DPTD consortium was, we were actually horrified at what was happening in Singapore, in Korea, and Israel. So we wanted to have an app with data minimization, privacy by design, without a central database that can reconstruct the social graph, which is the option chosen also in France and Hungary. Unfortunately, there the government can reconstruct from the data part of the social graph and can find out how many contacts somebody had. We wanted to avoid that because we believe it's not necessary to have this information to detect proximity. If you only have minimal data, you can actually avoid function creep. And we want to protect identities maximally, so we don't want to leak who has been in contact with whom, where, and when. And this is, of course, in part a debate with epidemiologists and public health experts, because they also want to find hotspots, and they want to have more information. But in general, our concern was that if you want to have a voluntary system, you should actually have minimal information and maybe use other technologies to deal with hotspots. And also we want the system to be easy to fade out, that actually it doesn't linger beyond the pandemic. I know that Willem mentioned business cases. I think there may be business cases where you want to do this, but I think we should be very careful that these cases are well justified and we don't end up in a society where everybody is traced all the time for a few business cases. This should be possible to not be part of such a system as well. Next slide, please. For technology, I think we all want to achieve the same things. It should be sufficiently accurate. So we don't want, when we pass somebody in the street to get a contact, we want to have minimum false negatives and positives. We also want to avoid false or incorrect reporting. I don't think this has been a major concern, but I think especially if pandemic lasts longer or if you go to use for different applications, it becomes more serious. We wanted a system was scalable and quickly deployable to 100 million users. And I think we managed to achieve this with the app, in spite of all the shortcomings of the app ecosystem. And in fact, roll out rather quickly because we managed to roll out the first apps by June, while the design started more or less in March and April. In a very short time, able to reach about 100 million users. Very important, I think, is full transparency. So the specs and the software are open. We only achieved it, I would say, for 95% because part of the Google and Apple software is not open, but in general, the protocols, the ideas, and most of the code is fully open. And I mentioned already, we want a voluntary solution. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to explain it in full detail because I don't have the time for this. But so rather than having a centralized system where you try to collect interaction data of positive people in a central database and analyze this, what happens here is Bluetooth phones send random beacons around. Then they store those beacons, but those beacons don't give personal information unless somebody tests positive. And what you then will do is you will then upload your beacons to a central database. In practice, it's actually a key used to compute those beacons. Then all the other phones will contact this database and will download these beacons or the keys. And based on this, they will make a local decision. Did I have a high-risk interaction with one of those users? And your phone will show a red screen. If you have such a high-risk contact, you can also show a medium-risk contact, but it will not tell you who it was or where it was, or approximately it will tell you which day it was, but not exactly the time of it. So more or less by sending out these random beacons and by only positive people sending out keys to identify those beacons, it's possible to identify who you were close to without actually leaking more information. This is a system that actually does minimal leaking. Of course, it requires a lot of analysis to study this carefully, but I think in spite of some criticism, I think there is an understanding that this has been a pragmatic solution that actually has worked and has offered reasonable security and privacy and accuracy trade-offs. Next slide, please. So we now have about 100 million downloads in the European region, where people get informed of low risks or intermediate risks of high risks, and it's actually the system that works reasonably well. Next slide. So what you see on the left is a graph of Europe, and the darker the color in blue, the more downloads there are. So the records are held by Ireland and Finland that go above 50%. Then you see countries like Denmark, Germany, and Netherlands, Switzerland, and Portugal go above 30% or around 30%. And as the color becomes paler, you have less adoption. The green countries on the left graph are the ones with a centralized system. And the systems also seem to work well, but the problem, of course, is that the data in the central system is much more sensitive, and I don't think the countries are willing to share this data. So it will be very difficult to couple the French system to any other system, because if France would give away this data, it would actually give away a lot of data about their own citizens to other member states. So on the right, we see the European service. What happened is a system was conceived over the summer and rolled out, deployed in October, and then the rollout has been happening since then. At this moment, 17 countries have hooked up to it, and 3 more are planning to hook up to it. And so more or less what happens is these keys with infection information, because they're pseudonymous data, It is very hard to identify. In practice, it's anonymous data. The countries can share all those keys, and the app virtually works as a single European app. That's more or less what we have achieved. So if you travel around to Europe, you get warned even if you're not in your home country, or even if somebody from another country visits your country. If you're in the green zone, you get warned afterwards if this person turns out to be infected. So I think it's a major success, even if the app is not perfect, the ecosystem is not perfect, given the time constraints and the complexities, because of course most of the complexity is not in designing this protocol. That was something which we did in a couple of weeks. The real complexity is in talking to health authorities, integrating with the health infrastructure, and also looking at all the legal aspects. Next slide, please. So I think it was a pragmatic solution that worked quite well, that offers strong privacy protection. Trade-off is you don't have a central database, but you're slightly more vulnerable to local attacks, and actually is effective in terms that it's fast, it reaches new people, and cannot be overwhelmed, but it's kind of hard to measure effectiveness. And as I mentioned, the hardest part is dealing with users, with healthcare system and the legal system. In my final minutes, I want to say something about a new system that is being deployed now in several countries. Next slide, please. So to do presence tracing. And again, there is lots of systems to do this based on paper or storing data at the venue in a centralized server or on a smartphone. But of course, they bring risk for privacy abuse. So several systems were being proposed. One system is being used or being rolled out in the larger countries, Germany, France, and UK. And then a more privacy-friendly system, Card Notifier, has been proposed by EPFL and a team around DP3T, and is now being rolled out or being considered for rollout in Ireland, Spain, and Belgium. Next slide, please. I will not have time to explain all the details, but more or less, we want to have maximal privacy. We don't want a list of venues. We don't want it to be possible to hotlist venues or profile venues. It should be easy to use. Work on any smartphone, also the older ones. Require no hardware for the venues, and have the health authority in the loop and prevent false notification. So I'll show you next slide the principle of the protocol. Of course, I cannot show you the magic. There is more magic behind it, namely identity-based encryption, something invented in the previous century that people thought was kind of a cool thing to have, but not very usable. It turns out that here actually it is usable. So venues create a public and a private key. What you do is you scan the public key, and if a venue is identified by the health authority as high risk, what happens then is you give the time of this high risk visit, and based on this, a derived key is computed and is actually distributed like in the DP3T system. The difference with many other systems is that actually on the smartphone, these QR codes are stored in encrypted form. They're not stored in clear form, they're stored with identity-based encryption with a special key for the time slot, which means that even if you confiscate a phone, you will not be able to know where the user has been, yet users can be warned. So next slide, and that's the final slide to conclude. So I think in spite of all the shortcomings of the app ecosystems, we managed to roll out decentralized solutions, both for proximity tracing and we're working for presence tracing, that are effective and that resist function creep. The ecosystem has been challenging. My understanding is that the bigger problems are integrating with the health system. This is something you should not underestimate because the health system has their own incentives, their own motivations. If you can't convince them of the benefits you offer, they will not invest in your solution. You have to get the broader public acceptance, and of course, you have to look at the legal dimension. As the final lesson I want to tell you I learned is that if you do privacy by design, it's actually harder to prove effectiveness, but also harder to prove proportionality, because the lawyers say you should prove that what you did is effective, otherwise collecting data is not proportional. So ironically, the more privacy preserving you are, the harder it is to prove effectiveness, and sometimes it can be harder to convince the lawyers. But overall, I think in the last year, we've learned a useful lesson, and I hope we can take this lesson to the future for future developments. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Purnell, dear Bart. That was very interesting, and I hope people just like myself learned a lot about contact and presence tracing. Thanks very much. We're very proud at EIT Digital for having this keynote with Professor Bart Purnell. I'm going to move on to our first panel now, and I'm calling to the virtual stage Mikko, Tamás, and Javier. Please turn on your cameras and your mics, the three of you. Thank you very much. We have around 10. Sorry, please mute your phone, mute your mic if you're not speaking. We're still missing Javier. At least I don't see you. Here you are. Hi, Javier. All right. I'm first gonna ask our panelists for a short introduction of themselves and their organization, starting with Mikko. Mikko, please.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. I'm Mikko Kuusakoski from EIT Group, which is a large Northern European construction company, and we operate in 8 EU countries and also in Norway and Russia. And I guess in terms of the industry, it's of course interesting to understand that construction industry is not like manufacturing where we can control everything inside a factory. So this kind of a contact tracing case is very interesting for us. It's not exactly a stadium where people come and go, but we have much more kind of controllable visitors than basic manufacturing. My background is 6 years in the construction business, 4 years in data and analytics, heading our centralized data and analytics function.
Thank you, Mikko. I'm going to move to Tamás now, who is the CEO of Sziget Festival, a very impressive festival in Hungary. Can you tell us about yourself and your festival, Tamás?
Yes, hello, my name is Tamás Kádár. Sziget Festival is one of the largest festivals in Europe. We have a daily capacity of almost 100,000 people, 95,000 to be exact. And it lasts 7 days, so a week-long, huge festival. It was elected twice to the best European large festival at the European Festival Awards. And you know, it's a 360 degrees arts festival at the same time. So it's not only music, but a lot of other art forms are presented on Sziget. And I think, just to connect to the topic, it's very interesting to see solutions like that in terms of the crowd management we are doing with such a big amount of people at the same time.
Great. Thanks for that introduction, Tamás. That was very nice. Moving on to Javier from Ferrovial. Javier, a few words about Ferrovial and yourself.
Thank you, Tahab. Thank you for having me here. I'm Javier Murillos. I'm senior project manager at Ferrovial. Ferrovial is a large company based in Spain, the headquarters, but we are all around the world, in Australia and in America, in Europe, you know, leading all the most important infrastructures there, such as Heathrow Airport in London, or any other highways in Canada, like 407, or the one in Dallas, now the I-66. And we are like 86,000 workers. So here with the COVID, it was such a situation in our company that we have to go against it, and then to have to save the health and safety situation of all of us. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thanks so much. The first question I want to ask to the panelists is how are you currently dealing with the contact tracing in your organization, or for your events, or for festival in the case of Tamás? I mean, are you using paper? Are you using an app? How are you currently dealing with it? Starting with Mikko.
Yeah, okay, so basically, in addition to kind of having this overall weekly and daily reporting from the sites that we collect so that we understand our big picture and impacts, we have instructed all the sites to kind of follow all the hygiene requirements that we get from authorities, but in addition to be even more strict about it. So basically having masks and having your hands disinfected is like part of the daily routine in every site, and it's a requirement just as much as having a helmet on the construction site. But in addition to that, we have segregated the teams. So we have team stickers. If you belong in a work group, you have to wear like a red or blue or green sticker so that everyone can visually see that you're not supposed to be walking around the other groups. So to kind of make sure that the groups are separate on the site. In addition to that, we actually have pen and paper notebooks that the managers are using to write down who have been working with who. And this is like something that we can, like a no-brainer, that we can directly replace with a token system like this. So definitely we have very practical kind of processes that we could replace. And I guess in general, having these kind of teams, these segregated lunch hours, breaks, and team rooms and all that, using a token, we could follow if those really work. Are they really segregated? And kind of understand how well those approaches work. So we did the test earlier using our methods that we employed back in autumn, and the tokens pretty much told us that if someone gets infected in a couple of weeks, half of the site will be infected. Even with those measures we had back then, and we have then tightened our measures even more, and we're actually discussing with the Nordic Token company that we do another measurement to see how much that helped to slow down kind of the disease spreading. But yeah, we have very replaceable processes where we could use the token.
Thanks, Mikko. And you actually even anticipated my next question, which was how could these physical contact tracing tokens be used in your setup? But you said that you have used the Nordic token setup that it's will be presented in a minute right after this panel already. Tamás, over to you. I don't think you have tested the token, physical tokens. How are you dealing with contact tracing? Is your festival happening? What do you think of using specific tokens to distribute to your participants?
So first of all, because of the pandemic, all the festivals and large-scale events were shut down immediately. So basically last year, and I guess this year as well, is a bad year for all the festivals because large-scale events cannot take place. Now, if we go back in time a bit, we were never using contact tracing in that sense, how we speak about it now, but in most of the cases, the access control to any large-scale events, concerts or festivals became very important after the Bataclan tragedy in France. So we had introduced a system related to the access control. So before you enter the site, what we call a check-in system, where we identify the persons who enter the festival site, and we connect this data to the bracelet they use as a ticket, and the bracelet they use is the same bracelet they use for cashless payment at the festival site. So we have a setup through which we can identify the people who are on site, and to add a contact tracing device to that bracelet would allow us to basically trace these people or the contact of these people during the festival. However, festivals are not allowed, so this will not happen, unfortunately.
Thanks, Tamás. Javier, over to you. We have little time, so please describe how you're dealing with contact tracing. And since you also already used the UK token, can you tell us more about it, how it was used in your setup?
Yes, for sure. As for Reals, it is a big company, as I said, and we have a lot of infrastructure. We have to dealing with different devices, different apps, okay, in order to assure and guarantee the social distancing and the tracking of every of people that we are. No, for example, we got an app for the offices. we have devices in the helmet for construction sites. So that's we have to deal with this, no? And as you said, with the token that we have the opportunity to check from Sentinel, it was pretty good. I mean, we also we can measure the 5 vital signal, and we got the chance to deploy and improve all the tracing that we got of the colleagues that use the solution. No, we have to, okay, the temperature is low, some degrees over the normal temperature. So hey, there's stand up and go to the doctor, visit him. Don't come to the office. Then let's check this group of people. So it was pretty good, the device, and it was really good for us and helped us in order to manage all the situations that we got here.
Great, thank you, Javier. We're getting already to the end of this panel, and my takeaway is that from what you said, the three of you, 2 of you had tested these physical tokens, Miko and Javier, and are pretty positive about it. I was very interested in also what Tamás had to say about tracing in general and with his festival. I want to thank you very, very much. I think there's appetite from you as customers for the physical tokens. Let's now move to the presentation, a very quick set of presentation of the physical tokens. Thanks, Miko, Tamás, and Javier, and see you later. I want to call in first Morgan. He's already here. Hi, Morgan, from the Nordic Token. Morgan, we can go to the next slide, and you have 3 minutes. Tamás, you can disconnect your camera. Thank you. Morgan, okay, over to you.
Thank you. I'm Morgan Fredriksson. I'm presenting the Nordic Token solution, which is a Swedish-Finnish collaboration with some part of it was Finnish, part of it was Swedish, and some other countries as well. And we're incorporated in Finland, but we also have a Swedish subsidiary to make it easier. And what we went for is we had 2 goals, which was to keep it an easy solution that's small, lightweight, and low cost. So we managed to build something on existing fabrication infrastructure with some small hardware changes and new software. We could keep the token cost at under 10 euro per piece. And we're doing it more or less the same way as most others. We're saving the proximity information, but we took a very stringent approach to integrity and privacy. So the identity of the user never ever enters the system. So then, therefore, we figured that we could not safeguard leaks. We could not safeguard what would happen to the data if we entered it. So we never actually have the data of the users in our systems. Instead, we notify them if the behavior is risky, and then we have a voluntary system where they can then go and get tested. Next slide, please. And we did pilots in both Sweden and Finland. In Sweden, we were in a typical indoor office environment. These are call centers, the colleagues Telia 24, where many people are in both in small offices and in larger offices, but you have a typical office environment. And with the EIT, we did this the construction type of industry, which is a completely different situation from our perspective, where people are moving around a lot and they're indoors, outdoors, everywhere. And the technology worked. We have some minor adjustments. For example, I think that the reset button was a bit too easy to trigger, but that's the type of things we noticed we have to fix. And we have a second pilot with EIT that's under discussion. We're trying to figure out what to do there. The interesting thing for us is that this is not the end-all solution. The other things that for example, the segmenting the workforce or making sure that people don't meet everyone everywhere, we can actually work to try to figure out if it's working. So we're doing these things together, and we followed it up with surveys that showed that overall, both from a customer perspective, that being the companies or the organizations, and from a user perspective, it was very positive. And I'll just single out one number from that, which is that 75% of our users said that they would use this token, which is a good number, I would say.
Thank you, Morgan. And in the next slide, you have Morgan's coordinates for the attendees that wish to reach out to him, and also the website. Please note it down. Thanks a lot. I'm calling to the stage Jeroen now from Token Me, the Benelux token. Jeroen, 3 minutes.
Yes, thanks, Jaap. Yes, my name is Jeroen Langedam. I'm representing Token Me, and we have launched the service Crowdband. Our background is focused on big events like music festivals and sport events like games, where we have experience, long-term experience in facilitating big music events with hundreds of thousands of bracelets. So that is, for example, with Tomorrowland, where we also have experience with cashless payments, integration, etc. And now we have developed a new token. You can see here the Crowdband, and this token is completely anonymous. So we have now focused completely on privacy by design, and we are measuring the proximity with by completely configurable systems. So we do a distance measurements as well as a duration measurements. And the token itself is exchanging its unique ID between each other. So our target markets are still big events like music festivals, sport events. So we have a lot of experience with soccer games. And now we have also added to return to the offices in a safe way. Next slide, please. So we have done quite some pilots in both the Netherlands and in Belgium. We started with some big sport events and soccer games with PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands, where we initially had 500 bracelets, and then we facilitated in collaboration with the Field Labs organizations in the Netherlands a Dutch national qualification game for European Championship with 1,000 bracelets, where 5,000 people were enabled to go into the stadium. And also we focused on the more festival and theater events by facilitating calibration and qualification event, where we actually could learn quite some about our tokens in theater in Utrecht. Then finally, we facilitated a larger trial in Belgium in a school with 400 schoolers in Antwerp. So what we discovered that although you have no connection with a person, there are no mobile phones exchanged or names, there are still privacy concerns by the users. So what we have been doing, we have been working with and also there are some challenges in if the system is actually working correctly, like with the smartphone apps. There are a lot of concerns about this. So we have been adding not only Bluetooth Low Energy as a proximity measurement, but also making use of ultra wideband as well as a sub-gigahertz radio. And we also use NFC. So we have 4 wireless connectivity technologies in order to ensure that the actual proximity is accurate enough. And for actually the automated contact tracing support, we are not making use of a two-way radio system in order to prevent any concerns on privacy. What we are doing is making use of a national broadcast radio system. It's just a one-way communication system. Thanks, Jaap.
Thanks, Jeroen. And here are your coordinates and website for the attendees that would be interested in reaching out to you. Lanfranco is next up. Thanks, Jeroen. Lanfranco, over to you. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Jaap. My name is Lanfranco Marasso. I work in engineering, and I represent here the consortium, the Italian-Spanish consortium that has developed the token, the physical token Momo. Next slide, please. The name of the token is Momo, and it comes from the activity named Proximate, where The two names proximate means to be proxy to the users, the holders of the token, and mate, to be silent, assigned you, protecting you. The Momo, developed in Italy and in Spain, is a small round wearable device. Basically, is roughly the size of a coin at €2. Very easy to use. You just need to put the token in your pocket, and it works in a silent way, collecting, exchanging information in an anonymous way. And this is very important. We also talk about privacy by design, but this is the real important part of the story, to protect people against COVID, of course, but protect also the data of the people in order to be protected, in order to live in the community. We use standard technology in the background, the back end of the solution, using open standard in order to avoid any kind of lock-in. We want to be very open to all the kind of technologies on the providers and the infrastructure, which can be different city by city, region by region, and state by state. We follow all the technical specifications defined by EIT Digital almost 1 year ago when we started with this venture, and you can see in the picture the size of the token and the wave. There is a small light, and usually the light that used to be green, meaning you can go and you can live safely your experience. And in case of contact, a positive contact with someone that became positive for COVID, your light become yellow, change the status, meaning you must be protected. You must take a control with your medical doctor. But this is important because we avoid to close on the community, but we protect the community because we can know exactly the people which are running a risk in their daily life. Next slide, please. In terms of pilot, the last month has been very impressive because we experienced a number of problems. Of course, we are running pilots, for example, for the battery, for example, for the storage of the contact. But we still run several pilots. The most important one is in athletic stadium in the city of Genoa in Italy, where we are measuring the contact between persons in their daily activities. But we also are running pilots in Spain, in offices and in school, and we are looking for big events. I'm very open to share with all of you all the information related to Momo. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, Lanfranco, and here are your coordinates and websites for those interested. Thanks so much. I'm calling to the stage now for the UK token, Dave. Dave, take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Rangi. I'm the CEO and CTO of WareHealth, and we developed the C-Spider token. Spider, we hope it sort of creates a web that will capture information relevant to pandemics. At the heart of our technology is a global cellular modem, which is built into every unit. It's completely anonymous. You would buy this device in a supermarket, so nobody knows who the number is. If you test positive, the positive result is again transmitted through the modem in the device, so it's completely anonymous, not going through your mobile phone. And because of the way the cellular network works, we can constrain that data to remain in the country of transmission, if that's what you wish to do, or if your countries join together, it can be pulled centrally if required. In addition to being a tracing token, we have added vital sign parameters into the device. So it's recording core body temperature, your SpO2 saturation, your heart rate, and other vitals. And this adds more value to the data being tracked. Knowing that you've had an interaction with someone who has a fever is quite useful to know. So the parameters that the device is looking for can also be updated in the field. So it's not just for COVID, it's for any viral infection. In our testing with our users, Ferrovial asked for additional functionality. It had to be more than just a token. You need to give the user another reason for uptake. So they requested man down and fall detection to help their lone workers. Other people have looked at branding the device, whether it be for football teams, but also well-being functionality, just to help the uptake of the device being used. The device is reusable and it incorporates green construction technologies and materials. And we're looking at an end user price of about 10 to 20 euros. We're hoping that's free from your employer or subsidized by the government. Next slide, please. As we say, our pilot was with Ferrovial, have nearly 100,000 employees around the world. And our technology partner was Nordic Semiconductor for the contact tracing. We deployed our pilot to Chile, and the first set of trial results were good, great feedback. Again, we acted on what Ferrovial needed as a customer, man down and GPS coordinates, and we're planning a second trial in the future. Again, the use cases for C-Spider are quite large. We're looking at giving people the confidence to go back to work, feeling safe when they're there. Again, the social distancing function, which we think will be needed in the long term. Next slide, please. Oh, I think that is my last slide, you guys. No worries. So yeah, if you need to get in touch, I'm sure the guys will supply my details and you can follow up and ask for some more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have your coordinates? Yes, we do. If you're interested in connecting with Dave, here's his email address. Thanks a lot. I'm calling to the virtual stage Shaba from Hungary. Can you put your...
Hello?
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Hello.
3 minutes, Shaba, go ahead.
Hello, and good morning, good afternoon. My name is Csaba Körmeci, and I'm a project manager at E-Group ICT. The company was founded in 1993 in Hungary. Since then, we have gained considerable experience through successful projects in health, financial, energy, and governmental sectors. Our product range offers innovative smart data management, digital identity, data security, cryptographic, and transactional solutions as well. We did not participate in the EIT Digital Data Against COVID-19 initiative, but still, we have developed our contact tracing solution, which I would like to present to you now. Please, next slide. The solution developed by E-Group ICT is called GABRIEL Token Guard, and it targets corporate use cases. GABRIEL protects employees from dangerous contamination like a guardian angel. The system includes low-cost physical tokens and has a secure, privacy-preserving, and user-friendly application package. We are measuring both distances and durations of the contact events based on BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy. The tokens use LoRaWAN communication, which is a technology for communicating small electronic devices based on a long-range, low-power radio frequency technique. The tokens have built-in vibrating motors for alarms, which can be used as a signaling system in case of very near contacts. The platform includes not just contact tracing, but monitors compliance and effectiveness of corporate health protection policies with detailed user statements and analytics. Our analytics platform may also support other sensor and token technologies as well. Next slide, please. We have started to test the GABRIEL Token Guard within our own offices during the second wave of the pandemic in Hungary. As you can see, I am wearing it and using it right now. Based on our test results, and we are discussing about the external pilots. First, we are negotiating with Tunzgram Operations, a Hungarian lighting company with more than 4,000 employees, because Tunzgram is such a partner where precision and high-tech quality are paramount. With other partners, we are thinking of other innovative solutions, such as signaling system that can be mounted on shopping carts. Hungary is currently trying to maintain the needs of economy and customers by limiting the number of customers in each shops. But this alone doesn't ensure that the necessary social distancing can be enforced within the shops. But with a buzzing sound and a minor vibration on the shopping carts in case of close contacts can alert and help with the attention of customers. And what will hopefully become interesting in connection with festivals is how, in combination with other E-Group innovations, it is possible to serve the comfort and safety of festival goers at the same time. Additional customer prospects include critical service companies, car manufacturers, government institutions, and other large employees. And next slide, please. We are still open for further partnerships and pilots. Tell us if you have a good candidate or partnering offer for us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Shaba. That was it for you. People can contact you. They have your email on screen. And we're now moving on to the last presentation for Proxy Aware. Maurizio, can you? Yeah, 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I present myself as Maurizio Griba, working for Reply.
a product developer in this case, where we developed a hybrid dual technology, a wireless token for proximity management. Next slide, please. Due to some trials that we perform with our customers, where basically we addressed manufacturing and construction works, we had a lot of issues in playing with the standard Bluetooth technology due to the fact that there were a lot of false and negative positives. So we had to develop a solution which puts together the ultra wideband technology for precise location, and as well as the Bluetooth for contact ranging. And therefore we created a badge which can be worn in a work suit, as well as can be kept in pockets or in purses, and measures with extremely precise distance. With precise technology, the distance between two badges. For addressing the manufacturing trials and our customers, we had to provide a rechargeable battery, but also a precision of 10 centimeters and repeatability in the measurements of more than 98%, so avoiding false and negative contacts at 2%. We had to save the contacts in an anonymous way on the badge, and having a free flow upload system on a gateway. So we typically deploy 100 or 200 badges each gateway. The gateway is like a very low and inexpensive tool that can be put, for example, in the entrance of the building, and in less than few tenths of seconds, all the contacts are anonymously uploaded. So the effect of having a human being or a body or a hand between two bodies, between the two tags, is very reduced if we use time-of-flight technologies instead of using the standard RSSI Bluetooth technologies, where we can have a wrong contact about 5 meters, and that was the cause of shifting to a more precise technology. We have TRL9, so you can shift to the next slide, please. Is a CE, FCC, and ATEX certified. It's sold currently in around 2,000 pieces in manufacturing plants for a few large customers, so beverage bottling facilities in Italy, France, UK, Mexico, USA, and India, where we got those certifications there. We have a certification as PPE, so personal protection equipment, and it can be used by indoor, outdoor, is by native GDPR compliant. And you can find us. I forgot to mention that's definitely a work of University of Trento and Fondazione Bruno Kessler, together with Digital Catapult in the UK for the market surveys. And last slide, please, my contacts. Great, you can just Google reply tracking solutions and you get to the page of the topic. Thank you, Shahab, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Maurizio. Great, we're done with this overview of the 6 technologies. So now we heard the customers who have appetite for this. We heard the entrepreneurs and technologists, and I'm calling to the stage the policymakers, the governments, the public authorities. And we have Ander, Merit, and George with us. Thank you very much for being with us and accepting our invitation. My first question, starting with Ander, is going to be about presenting yourself briefly and your role at your organization, please. Ander?
Thank you. My name is Ander Lusondo Haregi, and I'm a policy officer at GSANTE, which is the Director General for Health and Food Safety of the European Commission. And I've been working on the topic of contact tracing applications basically since when the discussions started in the European Coordination Forum, which is essentially the vehicle network, a voluntary network that brings together digital agencies. So that's essentially from where I can provide my perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Ander. Moving on to Merit from Sport Innovator and Field Lab. Merit.
Yes, thank you. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm a program manager of a Sport Innovator, and we stimulate innovations. And in this situation, we've introduced an innovation competition, a small business innovation research competition, to come with solutions to reopen society. That's one part of my job. And the other part is that I'm a member of the program team of the Dutch Field Lab events, and we have tested with 10 events already.
Thanks a lot, Merit. Moving on to George, Professor Crooks, please introduce yourself and your organization.
Hey, thank you. I'm George Crooks. I'm the Chief Executive of Scotland's National Innovation Centre for Digital Health and Care within Scottish Government. My background is I'm a family doctor by background and have been a medical director in the NHS for over 20 years.
Many thanks, George. So the first question I want to ask everybody here is, what are the investments that your government or public authority or organization currently makes in contact tracing? Starting with Ander.
Yeah, I think first of all we should speak about the work at European level in coordinating the approach to digital contact tracing. So essentially there, I must say the work in the EHELth network started quite early on, back in March last year, and I worked together with member states in building essentially the toolbox, a toolbox for member states to configure and to develop their own national contact tracing applications. And essentially there were four main building blocks, or there are four main building blocks as part of that toolbox or common approach. One is the legal side related to data protection and respect to GDPR. So having clear modalities and responsibilities when processing health data, both nationally, but also when it comes to the cross-border scenario. That's an important point. Then also in organizational terms, for example, the EHELth network is a body of digital health authorities or e-health agencies, basically in member states, but they also work very closely with agencies such as, for example, the ECDC or the WHO, and also the Health Security Committee, who also oversees the crisis management at European level. Then the third building block is more related to the epidemiological relevance of contact tracing applications. Of course, the protocols that are used in these applications need to be based on public health evidence, let's say. So they're also the link with the ECDC and the WHO is also very important. And finally, there is the technical building block, also linked to the European Federation Gateway Service, which essentially allows for the exchange of contact tracing data between different national contact tracing applications. I think when we go to the investments, I mean, on the one hand side, there is the part on investment in terms of coordination and resources in that area at European level, but also the investment in the European Federation Gateway Service as the main infrastructure that enables cross-border interoperability, because of course we know that the virus doesn't stop at borders. And that's also something that actually Bart mentioned in his presentation, where this infrastructure came out from the discussions of the EHELth network in June, July last year, and it was rolled out in September, October. And now there are already 17 member states that are connected to the network, and 3 more that will be connected, we hope, shortly. So I think that's essentially the overview of investments at European level at the moment.
Many thanks, Ander. Same question for Merit. What investments does your organization make in contact tracing?
Well, the government has introduced a central system about a COVID checker to check at entrance, and we have like a central system, a COVID announcement to have contact anonymous when you have been at risk. At my organizations, we have different kind of innovations, like Jeroen told us this webinar. Entrepreneurs with new insights. We've seen a lot of them today. So what will be the future is the question to the entrepreneurs. And the field labs is an experience how to deal with all the contact tracing and other different kinds of control. And at the field lab experience, we look at the behavior of the people. the functionality of all the contact tracers. Does it work, and what do we learn of it? The government asked the field lab events to make a risk model to see how many contacts are there at an event, and how many risks can you reduce to by personal protection, crowd management, other things. And we are learning with all the experience we're doing now. So I think that's enough for now.
Thanks a lot. Professor Crooks, same question to you. What investments does your government or your specific organization in Scotland make in contact tracing right now?
Great, thanks. I mean, I don't want to kind of repeat Bart's presentation at the start of this, but certainly in Scotland, we have got a fully integrated single system, which we call Test and Protect, which includes our health protection teams. We will never get rid of humans performing contact tracing. We need to recognize it is here to stay, and it is very important. But we supplement that with both digital self-serve. So yes, we are using the app that's used in Ireland and a number of European jurisdictions as part of that integrated system. But more importantly, and the thing that probably does set us apart a little, is that our citizens also, through that system, can do self-contact tracing. So they will identify their own contacts and upload those into our single contact tracing service. So when they get a phone call from one of the contact tracers, they're already in the mindset to answer those questions. So what it has done, it has reduced the time of those calls and the productivity of them, because they've done a lot of the pre-thinking before the healthcare system makes contact with them. The other thing I think that's important, and we've touched on this, is just because you can use a digital technology to do something doesn't mean you actually should. You need to use it where it adds most value. And this whole thing comes down at the end of the day to citizen trust. And if we lose a citizen's trust, it doesn't matter how smart and clever your technology is, it won't be used. So for us, we've been spending a lot of time and effort working with the population so that we explain what we're doing, what it does, and most importantly, and the point has been made by the presenters, what it doesn't do and what the safeguards are, to try to make sure it's both explainable and acceptable. And we need to continue across the whole of Europe to push these consistent messages out to people, because without that and the population seeing the value add from complying, it doesn't matter how smart or clever you are, it won't work.
Thanks very much for that. My final question to the panelists. In this session, in this webinar, we heard the keynote, we heard about the customers who have an appetite for this, we heard about the token solutions. They work in targeted situations and specific use cases. They are heavy on anonymity, privacy preserving. So my question here is very simple. Are you willing to endorse physical tokens, and how? Starting with Ander.
Well, perhaps here it's important to also have a disclaimer at the beginning of my answer. Of course, the European Commission doesn't provide contact tracing services. I mean, not manual nor digital. The infrastructure is essentially an interoperability service that is provided. But of course, it's very good to see all of this innovation that is coming out from the digital ecosystem, and that is also helping other businesses move forward in these very difficult times. We also see from our perspective, I mean, that the proximity contact tracing applications are also now complemented with additional features. I mean, Bart, for example, mentioned the crowd notifier protocol and also presence tracing. That's something that is also coming into the picture. Also, how, for example, proximity contact tracing is being mixed with other functionalities. For example, with the release of certificates or with test results and so on, that can also be integrated in the same apps, and that also enhance the value proposition. I think one of the companies was also mentioning earlier that one of the customers was also asking for additional features to be included. So that's something quite interesting. But of course, I think that beyond this, it's also important to go back to trust and transparency, data protection, interoperability, and cybersecurity. These are very important elements. And again, since these systems are typically complementary with other existing systems, it's very important to work in the integration in the manual contact tracing systems that are put in place by member states or also at regional or local level. So that's what I can say from my perspective. Of course, it's a little bit of a different perspective, but yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Ander. And these solutions are all European, 100%. That's an important dimension as well. Merit, your sentiment about these solutions, are you willing to endorse them?
Yes, and I heard George very well. I think we have to explain what we are doing. I think endorsement will be temporary, hopefully, and it has to add value for government, for the organizers, and for the public. And then it has to be very simple, like a plug and play, and then we will endorse it.
Thank you, Merit. Professor Crooks, what is your feeling about these physical tokens? Do you like them? Do you endorse them?
I think if the design complies with everything that's been talked about earlier on, and Merit summarized again the key things that the design has to address, the answer is absolutely yes, as part of an integrated set of services. There will not be one, as Bart said at the start, no one solution is going to solve all the issues. We need to make sure there are multiple products addressing clearly defined needs, because recovery of the health and care system is important. Economic recovery is important. Societal recovery is important. Different tools need to enable that. But as part of a data system that is standardized, safe, and secure, and acts in the interests of individual citizens and under their control.
Many thanks, Professor Crooks. Many thanks to Ander and Merit as well for this very interesting government panel. Thank you very much. We're getting towards the closing of our webinar. I told you we would go a few minutes over time. I hope you stick around with us. And I would like to call for wrapping up Willem Jonker, the CEO of EIT Digital, for a conclusion on this session. Willem?
Shahab, thanks very much. I will keep it very short because we've taken more time than anticipated. At the same time, I was really delighted to see the program. Bart, I thank you once more for your keynote presentation. I see a lot of pilots going on with the specific projects, the 6 projects that we have seen. I think we got a good overview of what are the real challenges. Of course, there is the technical challenges, there is the privacy, the acceptance challenge. I think it's also very important what was highlighted by Bart Panel, that the embedding in the overall care system at a national level, and that is unfortunately still very, very different at the different national levels in Europe, is an important element of a successful overall contact tracing, where all these things have to work together. I'm happy that we are able to contribute. I'm happy with all the people that joined us today. I want to thank also on behalf of EIT Digital, everybody that did participate actively in this webinar. And let's hope that we can use this technology to quickly get ourselves out of this pandemic, because I think everybody is longing for relief, and especially when the summer coming, more freedom, and of course also restarting events, opening up facilities across Europe in order to get back to our normal life. Thanks very much once again, and have a great day.
Thank you, Willem, and indeed, thanks everybody. This webinar was recorded. We'll make the recording available. There's an article on the website. Please look it up and reach out to the teams. Very interesting webinar. Thanks everybody, and goodbye.